Thank you, Bonnie. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Operations Oversight Committee and Board of Retirement. Today is Wednesday, February 3rd, and the time is 11:15 a.m. First item will be roll call and a short announcement.
Thank you, Chair Kehoe. This meeting is being conducted virtually, so I will do a roll call of the trustees to confirm attendance. Mr. Knox,
Present.
Mr. Santos,
Present.
Mr. Bernstein,
Present.
Ms. Gray, Mr. Oakham,
I'm here.
Mr. Moore, Mr. Robbins,
I'm here.
Ms. Zapanta, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Harris,
I'm here.
Chair Kehoe.
Here.
Staff participating in the meeting includes CEO Santos Kryman, AEO JJ Popowich, Chief Counsel Stephen Rice, Carlos Barrios, Richard Bendel, Bernie Buenaflor, Alan Cochran, Kathy Delano, Ted Granger, Cynthia Martinez, and Cassandra Smith from the management team, CISO Bob Schlottfeld, Fern Billingy and Elaine Salon from legal, Michael Huang and Irvin Wu from Financial and Accounting Services, Sylvia Botros from Benefits. If you have a comment or question on any item, please use the Zoom chat option to be placed in queue. At this time, we ask all meeting participants to mute your mics until you are ready to speak, and we may now proceed with the agenda.
Thank you very much. And yes, I use the Zoom chat, so please do put yourself in the queue that way. We will go ahead and move to our first item, which is the approval of the minutes. If there's no objection, we'll combine both December 2nd and January 6th as a motion. I'll need a motion.
So moved, Sean.
Moved, and I'll second. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Oakham,
Yes.
Mr. Robbins,
Aye.
Chair Kehoe.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us to public comment. Terry, have we received any requests from the public to speak?
No, we have not.
Perfect. Then we'll move on to item 3, which is reports. Our first is our operational briefings by JJ. I think you're muted, JJ.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, sure can.
It's been one of those days. So thank you very much, Chair Kehoe. And in front of you, you have the Operations Oversight briefing. I just wanted to comment, as Mr. Kryman mentioned in the Board of Retirement meeting, our Saturday experiment on offering call center service hours has been really successful. And so we're going to continue doing that for the month of February. We anticipate that probably get more as we go on closer to the end of the month. And also, I just want to let you know that our call volume has increased tremendously. We had 17,536 calls in January, which is the highest number of calls we've had in January in the last 10 years. So a lot of that is attributed to the fact that members are becoming more and more interested in their getting their questions answered in the call center. The number of calls have increased because of the increase of our usage of the member portal to share documentation. So a lot of the calls have been members getting registered for that and getting help with getting used to that. So that's a good thing in the long run, and we'll see how that call volume continues to go on. The only other thing I wanted to talk about, it's in the operations oversight briefing, is to point out that we're still working on retroactive salary adjustments, and we are working with the fire department. There may be some, there are some safety members that are waiting for some retroactive pay adjustments. So we've been in constant contact with the fire department on their progress towards entering those. Because the longer it takes to enter it, the greater an impact there will be, or surprise there will be when the retroactive adjustments come through. And then finally, one of the items that's been on here for a very long time is our telecommuting policy. And we have not released that yet because the county is working on revising their telecommuting policy. And so we're trying to look at theirs and sort of keep that in perspective as we move along. I don't want anybody to think that just because there hasn't been movement on, we haven't been finalizing our permanent telecommuting policy. We have an emergency one that we're operating under for the pandemic process. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. And do I have any questions from the committee representatives? Mr. Robbins?
Quick one, JJ. What percentage of the people who are getting ready to retire are still able to come in and get a face-to-face counseling session versus doing it remotely?
So we're not open yet for face-to-face counseling. So all of it is remote at this time.
Okay.
And when we say remote, for those that may not be familiar, I know Mr. Robbins is familiar, but anybody listening may not be familiar. We're doing one-on-one virtual counseling using similar technology to this. And so those counseling sessions, aside from being in person and talking to somebody face-to-face, are exactly the same content that we would go through. They last about the same amount of time. Each one of those usually takes about an hour.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to say I definitely appreciate the Saturday expansion. That was staff driven for sure, and definitely well received. I've heard comments internally as well. So this is good stuff, and I appreciate whenever we as an organization step up to meet the needs of our members, especially since many of our members have odd hours or need to make adjustments. A lot of our members are still out there working the front lines, and so definitely appreciate the availability. Next item is the LACERA paperless initiative by Mr. Cochran. Oh, I have Mr. Santos has a comment.
Thank you. Yes, actually, it's a question. Mr. Popovich, from time to time, members has excess contributions. And so typically they are discovered when the member is going through the process of retirement. So my question to you is, why does it take so long to get the money reimbursed? We're getting calls from people who are retired and they've been waiting for one case, I believe they told me 6 months to get reimbursement. So that's one question. The other question is, have the organization thought about when we're going to reopen and how our staff is going about getting vaccinated and things of that nature?
Thank you, Mr. Santos. We'll deal with the first question first. I'm not sure why a particular one would take 6 months. So if you have a particular member, please let me know and I'll take a look at it. There is the group that handles that also handles overpayments that we need to collect back or underpayment of contributions. They are backlogged, and we are working through that, but it should not take 6 months. It typically, I believe that process should take maybe a month to 2 months. There is a calculation process it has to go through and a quality assurance process it has to go through. But if you give me that specific member offline, I'll take a look at it and get back to you with a more specific answer for that particular one. In returns to preparing to come back to work, we do have a transition plan to come back to work. We have made a lot of modifications to our member service center as an example, because that will be one of the places that we open up first. There are now safety screens, glass screens in each one of the meeting rooms. We have air purifiers. We have all of the cleaning utensils. We're completely stocked with all of the PPE that we need. There are procedures for checking people in. There are procedures even that we might be taking, ask somebody to voluntarily take their temperature as they come in, depending on what the situation is when we finally do open back up. As far as vaccinations, we are sharing all of the information that we receive on vaccinations with our staff members. LACERA is, we are essential workers, but most of our staff members are not the essential workers that have daily contact with the public. And so for most of our staff members, we fall in one of the later tiers of the county's vaccination program. But we are continually providing information to our staff about vaccinations. We're not currently requiring vaccinations, we're encouraging it. But we'll see how that process goes on as time develops. Throughout the rest of the organization, I know I focused on the Member Service Center because that's the part where we interact with the public, but throughout the rest of the organization, we've put everything from additional protective barriers between cubes that weren't high cubes. We've gone through and mapped the entire organization and created spacing plans so that we continue to do social distancing until such time as that's not needed. And we've also put instructional posters and stickers everywhere, right down to controlling the flow of movement in hallways. And we are in the process of meeting with each of the division managers to update their plans update the organizational plans that make it specific to their particular division and work area in case there's something that they need in that area because of the way the area is constructed and the type of business that they're doing. So it's first and foremost on our mind, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that we're prepared to welcome staff back into the office as quickly as safely possible.
Chair Keogh, can I make a comment, Chair Keogh?
Yes, please.
So I think that JJ and LACERA has done a really good job of taking a look at the physical modifications that needed to be done in order to keep everyone safe, our staff safe, our members safe when they return. What we are going to, what we really need to look into in much more detail is the specific individual staffing plans that we're going to deploy once we return. So each one of the division managers, and we're in the process of actually setting up meetings. So we're going to start with the investment staff first in terms of identifying what exactly the parameters are going to be, who's going to be coming in when, whether we're going to have a modified work schedule or not. Are individuals going to work remotely, or is everybody going to come in? We have to talk about training. There's the issue about mandatory vaccinations, whether or not we're going to require that. That's a legal issue that we're still grappling with, and we're in the process of doing a lot of research in that area as well. And so I think we've done a good job of preparing the infrastructure for the return. Now it's a matter of modifying the plans and talking through the who's coming back and when they're going to come back. Are we still going to do red team, blue team? Is there still going to be a black team or purple team component to return to work? And that's going to be dependent on each division manager and what their needs are. What I can tell you is I have told my supervisors and my managers that they will be in the office. If there's a staff member that comes in, they need to be here. And so the management team and the supervisorial team will be here. We'll stick with the management team for now. We'll talk about the supervisors as we develop the plans, but I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that that is something that we are working at. It's going to take us a little bit of time, but I think we don't anticipate opening up anytime soon. So we do have some time, but I wanted to make sure that you were aware that there are internal plans that are still ongoing that are important to make sure that we return safely and we can provide the service to our members that they deserve. So thank you for that, Chair Keogh.
And Mr. Kryman, when you say anytime soon, you're saying post March Madness. So are we safe to say that through March Madness we'll be in a remote environment?
Yes, I would say that.
Okay. Any further questions regarding our operations briefings? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move along to the paperless initiative. Mr. Cochran.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good morning, trustees. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you about our LACERA paperless initiative. Like to listen to comments that you have and answer any questions that you may have about this initiative. We begun this exciting journey with the paperless initiative recently, and I'll give you a little bit of background about how it evolved and where we're at. The overall objective is to provide additional options to our members. We're not taking anything away, we're really adding to what is available to them. We also feel that the paperless initiative will ultimately provide for more timely communication and payments, as well as greater security of communication and payments to our members. So there are two components to this project. One is the paperless communication aspect of it, and the other is the paperless payment aspect of the project. So how this project evolved, I'll divide it into before the pandemic as well as currently. So before COVID pandemic, from time to time, we would have members to ask us for paperless options. Generally, the members would ask to opt out of receiving a monthly automatic deposit receipt, which is the monthly statement that is sent to each payee every month. And it shows the gross income, deductions, and net income for that month. It's important information. It's similar to a pay stub with your paycheck when you're working. However, some members ask to not receive that on a monthly basis, since it generally doesn't change from month to month, and they would like to be able to interact with us like they've become accustomed to interacting with their bank or credit union or mutual fund company. It's very standard these days to receive communications from financial institutions in a paperless fashion. So we have known of this. It's been a project that is something that we have wanted to move forward. However, with the advent of the COVID pandemic and the challenges that we've encountered with the pandemic, the paperless initiative really rose to a very high level of priority. With the COVID pandemic, internally we encounter and are still working through challenges and barriers to receiving physical mail to the office, as well as sending out mail from the office. Those barriers are in part the impact on COVID on our staff in our document processing center, as well as the state of our mail delivery system and delays in the mail delivery system, postal service. So also we encountered some payees who are still receiving checks to not receive their physical check as timely as we'd like. Not that we were delayed in sending it out. It's more of an aspect of how long it took for the U.S. Postal Service to deliver it to them. So anyway, as a result of COVID, it has made this project a very high priority. And so we have kicked it off. And with our kickoff, it occurred this December, past December, where we began offering our members an option to opt out of receiving in the mail a monthly automatic deposit receipt. We also offered for active employees, those employees who are receiving an annual benefit statement, which is the statement that shows the accumulation of pension benefits each year, that those members can opt out of that statement, opt out of receiving it in the mail, as well as all members can now opt out of receiving in the mail our quarterly newsletter. Keep in mind that when those documents are available, we are now emailing all of our members who, when those documents are available. So when the quarterly newsletter is available, we email our members that it's available. And if you opted out on a mailing, you could read the newsletter, for example, off of LACERA.com. For the ADRs and annual benefit statements, a member can go into My LACERA, view and print off those statements if they choose. The next step that we have taken is that we have evaluated the correspondence that is generated internally. We've learned and evaluated that we have about 600 internally created documents that are sent to members. And we wanted to determine which documents have a potential to be provided to our members electronically, as well as those documents that we might be required or prefer to mail. So of the 600 documents, we have determined that there's about 25 documents that we prefer to mail as a best practice, or are really required, perhaps by CERL, for example, to mail the document sometimes by certified mail. Now, with this evaluation of documents, this evaluation was or has been as a result of a collaboration from many divisions as well as this entire project. So the executive office, internal audit, the legal office, systems, admin services, benefits, member services, we've all have looked at these documents and determined that right now we feel that 25 of those documents we will continue to mail. So the next step, which we anticipate having available by the end of March, is the option that members can choose to opt out of all correspondence that is sent to them by LACERA, with the exception of those chosen 25 that we've determined will be mailed. And that will be an opportunity that a member can elect. We feel that will be available towards the end of March. And at any time, if a member should opt out of receiving a mailed communication, they could always opt back in to receiving it. So we intend to always offer to our members the opportunity to continue to receive communications from LACERA by mail. The paperless initiative is merely an opportunity to provide an additional option to receive it electronically if so desired. And as an example of the impact, the magnitude of communication, internally generated communication going to a member, I like to just describe to you one document which we would like to be able to offer to our members electronically, and that would be the service credit purchase contracts. Now, the service credit purchase contracts are contracts where some members are able to purchase service credit. And each month we receive between 500 and 700 requests for service credit purchases. The members provide us with their request. We do the necessary calculations. We then currently develop a paper packet. And the contract is generally a 3 to 4 page contract. There will be other documents in that packet, which will be payment schedules and so forth. So it's kind of a hefty packet of material that is put together to be mailed out to the member for their service credit purchase contract. These contracts are contracts, and those individuals who want to participate often are very anxious to receive them. They're time sensitive because there is a contract deadline date. And for many members, they may be purchasing service in anticipation of retiring soon. So it's a time-sensitive document for many members. The ability to create these contracts and then immediately upload them to LACERA, which would then generate an email to the member that their contract is available to through LACERA, would be a huge advance. It will be an opportunity for a member to receive their requested information much more quickly. They can evaluate whether or not they want to participate in the contract. And if the member chooses to have a paper contract mailed to them, of course, we will still do that. So I just wanted to use that as an example of the magnitude of this paperless initiative on the workload, as well as of the resources that are expended in providing these materials to our members. And then finally, as I mentioned, the paperless initiative not only includes paperless communications with our members, but it also involves paperless payments to our members. So right now, more than 97% of our members are on direct deposit or ACH payment, which is very reliable and highly secure. But there's still about 3% of our members that choose to receive a physical check, which is mailed to them. That represents about 1,800 checks that are mailed to members each and every month. And believe it or not, there's right now about 29 members or payees who live outside of the United States who are still asking that we mail them their monthly payment. So again, with the impact of COVID, this has really highlighted the need to find a solution other than mailing a check for those individuals that we are currently mailing checks to. So we are exploring a couple alternatives to mailing of checks, which those alternatives we're exploring are either a prepaid payment card, or for our international payees, it could be possibly a prepaid payment card or a wire transfer. We're still in the evaluation stage right now, and we will be reporting back to the committee on what we would like to do in this area, but we're looking forward to move this forward in the months ahead. And we think that ultimately it will provide payments to all of our members much more reliably and more timely. And then, as mentioned in the memo, our communications division is launching a extensive educational campaign about the opportunities that the paperless initiative provides to members, as well as how to access documents if a member chooses to participate in the paperless initiative and have documents provided to them electronically. The member would need to register for the LACERA portal. And so our communications department is providing educational information to our members about how to register, and also reinforcing the benefits that a member can enjoy if they do choose to communicate with this in a paperless fashion. And finally, the end result, the ultimate destination for this project is really to provide greater choices, greater services to our members. Everyone likes choices, so we're giving them more choices. We're not taking anything away from anyone. We're just adding additional choices for our members who want to participate. It also provides a greater level of convenience for our members. Our members can obtain documents through LACERA in a very efficient manner, and it really provides a ease of doing business with LACERA that many of our members will appreciate once they become accustomed to it. And then finally, it also provides a higher level of security. Dropping material into the mailbox, so to speak, is secure, and as secure as any mail would be. But having the opportunity to access information through My LACERA in a paperless fashion will provide a greater level of comfort to members, knowing that their financial information is really more secure. So anyway, that's just a high level overview of the initiative. There will be more to come. We'll be reporting back to the committee throughout this year on achievements and additions to this project. And if any trustee would have questions, I would be very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions regarding our paperless initiative? Mr. Robbins?
I noticed on Mr. Kleiman's report this month, when I take a look at the call center, when I take a look at the reasons why people call the call center, I was a little surprised that the number 3 reason for calling the member services call center is My LACERA. Now, last weekend, I tried to get into My LACERA, and I might as well have been trying to walk in the West Wing of the White House, because I forgot what my password was, and because I haven't used it forever. And in order for me to, the questions that it wanted me to answer, one of them was something off my check stub. Well, I didn't have my check stub handy. And if I wanted to get into My LACERA and I was out of town on a trip, on vacation or whatever, and I didn't have the check stub, that doesn't seem like a real smart question to be asking people as one of the questions that you got it, one of the hurdles that you have to make in order to figure out how to get your password squared away. So I'm not surprised that we're getting that many calls. I mean, are the calls we're getting about My LACERA because people just don't know how to get into their My LACERA account? Because it ain't easy. So that's my question.
Okay.
I see Kathy there ready to throw the life vest in.
No,
so,
well,
or if the two of you can address it, I'll let you figure it out.
Okay, thank you. You are correct, Trustee Robbins. Currently, many of the calls that we are receiving in our call center is members asking for assistance to reset their password, or they have locked themselves out. Now, and Kathy can speak to the enhancements in our password protocol. However, it's not uncommon that as a member begins receiving more emails about documents becoming available at My LACERA, they have an interest in getting into their portal, My LACERA portal, that they may have registered maybe years ago. As members set their password, become more accustomed going into the portal, I anticipate that those calls will recede. To the topic of needing a check stub, you have a great point, and we have a solution for that. As a default, a member can use some defaulted questions, but to get into the portal. But what would be preferred and possibly even more secure would be to create personalized questions, questions and answers that only you would know the answer to. For instance, as an example of a question, you could say, you know, what is my favorite flavor of ice cream? Well, for me, it would be all, because there's not a flavor of ice cream I don't like. Only I would know that. No one else would know that. So that's an opportunity to establish personalized questions that you'd always have with you without having to refer to a document from LACERA. So
Alan, I'll pass
Huh?
that on to Kathy, because I do think that the data security side of it should be covered by the IT staff. So Kathy, can you address some of that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. So Alan, I agree with everything that you said. We do need to make sure that the member accounts are secure, and we do have some alternatives to the questions that Mr. Robbins is referring to. Moving forward, we have some options that we are considering, two-factor authentication, so that you would receive a code on your phone rather than having to remember data questions or even your personalized questions. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is the spike in the calls that came in about LACERA were directly related to the paperless project. So when we imported all of the ADRs for our payees, we sent all of them an email encouraging them to look at LACERA and go paperless. And so that was 40,000 emails that went out. Many of the recipients had the same experience that Mr. Robbins did. They had not needed to access their LACERA account in years, and they took the opportunity to try to log in, had some issues, and called the call center. So it is important that we keep our members' identity secure, and there will always be some hoops to jump through in order to do that.
Thank you, and I'm sure that we could table some of the data security issues to item A in the executive session as well.
Okay, I agree.
Mr. Santos.
Thank you, Mr. Kehoe. Yes, I was going to make the reference to the item that we have on executive session. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that I know it is frustrating for many of our members to go to double authentication and verification. It is frustrating, but is the reality of today's environment. And one suggestion I may have is that perhaps when we, as we change the requirements and improve the security level, that we notify the members through email, letters, or what have you, and encourage the members that haven't logged in to LACERA.com to do it, because we implemented new security provisions in there. Perhaps it was done. I'm not sure about that, but I think it would be to give people a heads up, because it is frustrating sometimes when you're trying to get in there and you forgot your password or mistyped the password a couple of times and you get locked out. And those questions in giving the possibility that somebody's phone could get hacked. So by sending the code to your cell phone, it could be problematic, as we will probably discuss later. So just something to keep in mind. I agree with Mr. Kehoe that this is something that we need to be vigilant, because it is scary with regards to people trying to get data and change our direct deposit to some other bank and things like that. And I always wonder about the folks that are that have retired internationally, because I think that becomes a little more problematic there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep, I agree. Multi-factor authentication is the way to go. I'm glad to hear that we're going in that direction. Okay. Any additional questions regarding our paperless initiative? I'll just comment that I definitely appreciate this direction. I know that years ago on the board, there was a lot of concerns about our retired members being technically savvy, et cetera, and as we move forward, and especially as we're right now in this, the benefit of the COVID situation is that I think a lot of people are getting comfortable with it, and there is a ton of positives that can come out of it. So I really appreciate this direction, and I like to see us continue moving forward. Okay, let's move on to our financial review. That's item C of report, and Mr. Granger.
Yes, thank you. So I'm Ted Granger. I'm with the Financial and Accounting Services Division. With me today is Michael Hong. He heads up our investment accounting section, and also Irvin Wu. He heads up our general accounting section. So I'm going to kick things off. I'll go through a couple slides and I'll hand it over to Michael, and Irvin will fill in, and then I'll follow up at the end. So this is our annual financial review of the fiscal year 2019-2020. Essentially, this is our presentation of the June 30, 2020 financial statements. Seems like June might have been thank you, Alex. Seems like June may have been some time ago. However, I'd just like to point out that we're not that far behind. We typically receive our audit opinion in middle of October, which we did. That was obviously conducted by Plant Moran, the financial statement audit, our external auditor. And then we work with Cynthia's group to take basically a Word and Excel document, our financial statements, and we add a cover letter from Mr. Kryman, and we combine that into what we call the CAFR, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That is all completed at the beginning of December. So due to some timing delays and a couple scheduling things, we ended up coming to this meeting, but nonetheless, we're very excited to present the results today. Oh, and I will point out that Plant Moran presented the audit to the audit committee back in December. And that was a clean audit, or an unqualified opinion, by the way, for those of you who are not on the audit committee at that time. So if we could go to the next slide. This presentation really tries to, I guess, summarize and give you kind of a high-level overview of both our CAFR and our PAFR. The CAFR is essentially the financial statements. It's the big book. It's about 200 pages. It's quite a read. It is out there on the LACERA website. The links are active. The PAFR, on the other hand, is a condensed version. That's really the pamphlet that goes to, is mailed out to all members essentially, and that was completed in mid-December. Michael will walk us through some of the financial highlights. He'll break down some of the numbers and talk a little bit about the financial reporting. We'll briefly cover the pandemic concerns. There's a new footnote in the financial statements, and also GASB 84. Irvin will talk about that. And finally, I'll circle back with a new financial reporting standard that's in effect for next fiscal year. And if I could go to the next slide, please. So we put together the teamwork, one of LACERA's values, the acronym, and essentially it is teamwork. It takes a lot of folks and a lot of effort and a lot of time to prepare these financial statements. We're preparing them in a subsequent fiscal year, so we're not only doing our regular work, but we're also preparing our financial statements from the year that just closed or was just completed. We have a large team in accounting. About 13, 14 people contribute to completing the financial statements each year. And again, it's a significant effort. I did talk about the auditors that review the financial statements and disclosures. Also, internal audit helps coordinate that project. There is a what we call an MD&A, a management discussion analysis document that it kind of summarizes or gives you a high-level overview of the financial statements. That's included in the financial statements right after Mr. Kryman's letter. I mentioned communications. We also, of course, are overseen, and this is part of that process by the boards and by the executive office. I did already mention that we're recording the financial transactions for the new fiscal year. And finally, keeping up to date with the GASB standards. Those are really the reporting standards that govern the disclosures in the book. GAAP, those are the accounting standards themselves, how we keep the records, how we present information. And we mentioned AICPA. Those are really the audit standards that govern our external auditors and certain procedures they do, certain items we may have to disclose, certain things we might want to include in the letter, the audit opinion. Next slide, please. Actually, I'm sorry. Let's go back one slide. One major thing I forgot to mention. I did want to recognize and thank a number of different groups in helping us prepare these statements. The investment office, the legal office, the executive team, internal audit communications, my staff, and of course, Plant Moran. I'd like to highlight the investment office. There is a lot of investment information that's included in these financial statements. There are footnotes covering fair value of the investments, security lending, hedge funds, real estate derivatives. There's an entire investment section included in our financial statements right after the footnotes, and John Grable prepares a letter every year for that. So it's a big coordination effort, and again, I just wanted to highlight and thank them for their participation. We couldn't do it without the help of all of these folks. Next slide. So this year's CAFR theme, if you take a look at the book, it's gorgeous. It has lots of colors. It has fantastic graphics. The displays, the way the charts and the data is displayed, every detail is reviewed and edited and developed by our communications team. And so we always are extremely proud of the book. This year's theme is strong performance in a challenging year. And so I love that sort of theme in the ribbon there in the middle of the page. Adversity, adaptation, advancement. And essentially the theme covers, goes throughout the book. And so if you do thumb through the book, you'll find additional items. It sort of opens each section with an additional language and kind of a display of the theme, if you will. And so it's a great way to break up the monotonous financial data. All right, next slide, please. The GFOA awards and the PPCC awards. You know, I did the math and it looks like we've been receiving the CAFR award since 1990. So we're very proud of that. We submit both of these documents to GFOA for review. And there are standards, there are checklists, there are, I want to say, about 5 reviewers, between 5 and 6 reviewers that look at our documents, and they do give us comments. We're responsible for implementing all of those comments, if you will. So we are proud that we have been receiving these awards very consistently for a number of years. The PPCC award, we've been receiving that for 18 years running. And again, that's another document that covers plan design and how we run the administration of the fund. And so there's a lot of detailed questions and a lot of information they ask. And we're very pleased that we received that award as well. And the next slide, please. I think this is where I hand it off to Michael to go over some of the numbers and the details.
Okay, thank you, Ted. Good afternoon, trustees. I'm Michael Huang. I'm here to present the financial highlights for fiscal year 2020. Listed here are the key points that will be discussed in the subsequent slides. Next slide, please. Starting with the net position restricted for benefits, or commonly referred to the funds balance, which reflects assets available for future payments to retirees and their beneficiaries, and any current liability owed at fiscal year end. For fiscal year 2020, the funds balance increased by 0.3%. The funds balance was at 58.3 billion in fiscal year 2019 and 58.5 billion in 2020. For the last decade, the growth of the fund increased from 39.5 billion in 2011 to 58.5 billion in 2020, resulting a 48% increase. Next slide, please. On this slide, we have 3 charts: total assets, total liabilities, total net positions. Total assets consists of investment at fair value, cash and cash equivalent, cash collateral from the borrowers of our security lending program. It also includes receivables such as sale or investments, accrued interest and dividends. Total liabilities consist of purchase of investment payables, tax withholding payable, accrued expenses, and obligations under the securities lending program. The net position chart is self-explanatory. Total assets minus total liability equal total net position. Next slide, please. The primary source that finance the promised benefit LACERA provides are the collection of member and plan sponsor retirement contributions and investment income from the holdings. For fiscal year 2020, total addition to the fiduciary net position were 3.9 billion. The primary use of LACERA's assets include benefit payments to retired members and their beneficiaries, the refund of contributions to terminated members, and the administrative expenses. For fiscal year 2020, total deduction from the fiduciary net position were 3.7 billion. For fiscal year 2020, there was a net increase of 200 million compared to a net increase of 2 billion in the prior fiscal year. This $1.8 billion decrease between the 2 years was mainly due to the smaller investment return generated during fiscal year 2020. Next slide, please. Pension plan actual asset allocations. As of June 30, 2020, growth category accounted the biggest allocation at 48%. For growth category, it includes global equity, private equity, and opportunistic real estate. For credit, we invest in high yield, bank loan, emerging market, and illegal credit securities. For real assets and inflation hedges, we have holdings in core and value-added real estate, natural resources, commodity, and tips. For risk reduction and mitigation, it consists of investment-grade bonds, hedge fund, and cash. Lastly, overlay composite, invest in synthetic securities. Next slide, please. This slide presents the total fund return net of fee over the last 5 years. Investment return have the single greatest impact on the fund's balance. For fiscal year 2020, total fund return was 1.8%. The policy benchmark was 2%. LACERA's assumed rate of return was 7%. Next slide, please. Funded ratio is a measurement of the fund's funded status, calculated by dividing the valuation assets by the actuarial accrued liabilities. Funded ratio was 77.2% as of the June 30, 2019 valuation. This slide also shows the increase in the employer contribution rate over the last 3 years. Next slide, please. On this slide, we present the last 5 years total LACERA membership, 2016 to 2020. The comparative LACERA membership data for the last 5 fiscal years shows a growth in total membership, with an addition of around 19,000 members. Over the last 5 years, the number of active members grew about 12%, while the retired members grew about 10%. The following slide shows the breakdown of the membership. Next slide, please. As you can see here, Plan D represents the largest group, and Plan G represents the second largest group for the general membership. For the safety membership, Plan B represents the largest group. In the next 2 slides, I will talk about the OPEB trust. Next slide, please. This slide shows each agency fiscal year-end fund balance within OPEB trust. The OPEB trust fund balance was 1.5 billion as of June 30, 2020. LA County's pro rata share of the fund was 1.4 billion, which translates to 97% of the fund. Superior Court's fund balance was 46 million, which translates to 3%, and LACERA owns the remaining balance at 5.6 million. Next slide, please. OPEB Trust invests in similar assets as of the pension plan, but not as diversified. For example, OPEB Trust does not invest in private equity, hedge fund, and gateway type of THC real estate. With that, it concludes my presentations. I will turn it over to Irvin. Thank you, Alex. Next slide, please.
Yeah, actually, I'll take on this slide if Irvin doesn't mind. Just a real quick recap. I did want to highlight that the CAFR, or the financial statements, really include reporting on sort of 3 different entities or 3 different things. One is the pension plan or the pension trust. The other item, I guess the second column, if you will, in our key financial statements, is the OPEB trust for retiree healthcare benefits. And that is obviously the county and LACERA's and Superior Court's pre-funding account for future OPEB benefits, for funding future OPEB benefits. And finally, our third column is the OPEB custodial fund, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in a minute. And again, that is also for retiree healthcare benefits. So those are really the 3 core, I guess, key elements to our financial statements. And on this slide, what I'm trying to highlight here is really that we did, at our auditor's request, include a new footnote on the pandemic concerns. Obviously, LACERA is a large organization. We have a lot at stake in terms of our monetary size as well as our staff. And so they wanted us to report, basically, what happened, what was the impact with regards to the pandemic to LACERA's operations. And that's essentially what this footnote covers. It's a narrative footnote. It really talks about the safety protocols that were implemented at LACERA, the remote work environment that was implemented for the employees. It talks about, canceling non-essential business travel. A couple of the key things that I thought were really important that I assured our auditors of, and that is that we continue to receive plan sponsor contributions, both to the pension fund as required by CERL, as well as to the OPEB trust. And I always like to highlight this, but keep in mind that the county and the plan sponsors fund the OPEB from 2 perspectives. One is the monthly ongoing pay-go costs, as well as the OPEB trust or pre-funding contributions. So those didn't stop, and we were very grateful of that, for that. And we continue to provide, the organization continued to provide member benefits without interruption. And I think that is another key component or key factor. It's almost the first thing I told the auditors when they asked me, so, hey, how are things going? Finally, we had our skilled investment office monitoring the investment returns, and there was a comment in that footnote about that. And then my team continued to make the daily, sort of one-off member payments. Sometimes there are issues with the benefit payment, and also paying our vendors timely during this pandemic and these different operating environments. So now I'll hand it back over to Irvin, and he's going to cover the last few slides.
Thanks, Ted. Hello, all the trustees. My name's Irvin. I'll be going over the GASB statements that we recently implemented or are looking forward to implement. Starting with GASB statement number 84, fiduciary activities. This was a GASB statement that we've implemented for 2020, and we actually did an early implementation. GASB allowed an extension of a year, and that was due to COVID-19. We had already changed our accounting system due to the comparative basis of our financial statements, and so we already had it all prepared. We decided to early implement. GASB 84 basically changes the OPEB agency fund to the OPEB custodial fund. And so now it requires an income statement where we show the actual activity versus before, where it was just a flow of the ins and outs. GASB 84 also requires a fiduciary net position to be presented on the balance sheet. That number is 148 million as of June 30, 2020. Alex, next slide, please. I'm sorry, this was a slide for 84. Next slide, please, for 87. Looking ahead on the horizon, GASB 87 essentially capitalizes leases, and that involves recognizing the cost of a lease as an asset and expensing it over time rather than just at once. And so GASB 87 is also postponed for a year, and implementation for LACERA is expected to be June 30, 2022. We're going to be working with other divisions to create an inventory of LACERA leases, and we'll be working with our external financial statement auditors to determine if these leases are material enough for us to implement GASB 87. And so that concludes my part of the presentation. I'll hand it over to Ted for closing comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Irvin. Yeah, again, I just wanted to thank all of our business partners and the executive team. I did have a long and detailed conversation with Mr. Kryman on a late Friday afternoon. He did go through the financial statements very carefully. He did read them, so we were very, very impressed. He had very thoughtful comments and suggestions and ideas, and so we were very pleased. And of course, our legal office spends a lot of time reviewing the statements. So just wanted to express my gratitude to my team as well as all the parties involved in preparing these statements. So if there's any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Excellent presentation, and I always every year look forward to looking at the CAFR and seeing what the theme is, and seeing how everything turns out. And from being somebody who has an MPA in budgeting, and reading too many financial reports from a wide variety of government agencies and entities across the board, I'll just tell you that this is clearly the most well-designed and both functional and beautiful looking document that I've seen out there. So I'm always impressed with it, and we all support you in what you've done and appreciate the ongoing hard work of you and your staff. Let's go ahead and open it up to questions and comments regarding the presentation. If you have any, please jump in. I see Mr. Robbins, you took yourself off mute.
Yeah, It was a good report. I found it just chock full of good stuff, good information. I'm curious why the court numbers are so high with respect to the OPEB numbers. Why is the Superior Court as high as it is, or why is it so underfunded or overly expensive? Does anybody really know?
So I guess you asked two questions. You asked about the underfunding. The court, I guess, if you will, their funding plan as far as the OPEB trust goes is not as aggressive as the county or LACERA. The county has a plan. They give us a 5-year projection. They update it about every year or so. The county has continuously met that projection. I think I want to say for 21, it's above 200 million that they're contributing just to the OPEB trust. LACERA follows suit in terms of our scale and our size. There's ratios that are calculated to determine how much LACERA's portion is, and that comes out of our budget. The court's funding is a little different. They basically look at their revenues at the end of the fiscal year, probably at the last quarter, and they say, okay, what do we have left? How much money can we contribute to the OPEB trust? And I want to say off the top of my head, historically, it's been about between $1 million and $2 million. So again, the court doesn't have an aggressive plan to pre-fund and provide those contributions to the OPEB trust. And Milliman, when they perform our OPEB valuation, they are very aware of this. They understand the court's funding stream and what the court uses, what methods they use to fund it. So and that's disclosed in the actuarial report. In terms of their valuation and the liability associated with them, we would have to look at the actuarial report. I don't know that there's anything significant about their member statistics or member census data or member population that would necessarily drive up their liability. I think the membership is studied as one group. The financial part of it is broken out by the county, LACERA, and the court, and then of course the other districts. So we can talk to Milliman they'll be presenting the experience study to the Board of Retirement in March. We can certainly ask them to highlight any outliers, if you will, with regards to the court. But I don't typically see anything unique with them or their population.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
We'll consider that as a direction to staff to follow back up with the committee regarding that issue.
Sure.
Any additional questions, comments, or thoughts by anyone on the board or any staff? I'm seeing none, so I definitely appreciate the presentation. I see Santos, you put yourself off mute.
I just wanted to thank Ted and his staff and all of my staff, quite frankly, for all of their efforts. I think they did a phenomenal job all the way from the investment office to Ted's group. The communications staff really did a great job with the presentation of the PAFR and the CAFR. And so I just wanted to recognize them and say thank you for a job well done.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move on to item D of our report, which is a LACERA.com redesign update by Cynthia Martinez.
Well, good afternoon, Chair Kehoe and trustees. My name again is Cynthia Martinez, and I'm Chief of Communications. One of our many tasks or responsibilities is to communicate the retirement benefit information to our members, along with other important information. And we do that with various medias, such as our quarterly newsletters, miscellaneous mailings, we do an email blast, and we have other resources. But we also use LACERA.com heavily to communicate that information. And I don't know if you know, but The current LACERA.com was actually originally launched in October of 2000. So it's been over 20 years that our current LACERA.com has been active. And it's definitely served its purpose. And I think we all can agree that it is in need of an update or redesign. And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about today is the LACERA.com update or redesign. In July of 2019, I actually made a presentation just to let you know how we were starting off the kickoff of the update or redesign. And just to go back a few steps to give you some of that background information, in 2017, the website redevelopment project was added to the strategic plan. Immediately, John Gaffney from Systems, he's our LACERA's web developer. He started working on the redesign. Actually, he created the basis for the site architecture and interactive elements. Fast forward to 2019, the managers and executive got together and talked about the strategic goals. And it was unanimous that LACERA.com was a priority and that it needed to be moved forward. So during that meeting, a cross-functional team was put together with various staff members out of different divisions to go ahead and start attacking LACERA.com and moving it forward. Immediately, we met with John Gaffney to talk about the site architecture that he had initially created. We wanted to get everybody's input. This was definitely a collective effort. So again, we wanted to get everybody's input regarding the site architecture because of its importance. We used other systems. We looked at their websites to see what they were doing, and we also looked at other websites. We wanted to incorporate all the best practices possible in our redesign. So we did a lot of review, but we also kept in mind that our main focus was to ensure that the navigation was going to be easier for our members. We wanted to help them understand and find their plan benefit information. We also realized that we have various audiences, so we wanted it to be relevant to them as well as in regard to the navigation. I mentioned interactive elements that John worked on. We wanted to incorporate responsive design. So not only could you look at it on your computer, you would be able to look at it on your iPad or your smartphone. Another component was we wanted to make sure that we were ADA compliant, that we were meeting the current accessibility compliance codes. So those were all things that we took into consideration when we were starting off with the site architecture. We finally got it to a point that we felt like we had everything we needed, but we took it one step further and then again met with subject matter experts from various divisions to review with it one-on-one. So communications had that conversation with the different divisions just to make sure that we were incorporating and the flow and the navigation was working to their needs. But as we know, we were building this not for our internal purposes alone. We wanted to make sure it was going to be user-friendly for our members. So we also did member testing. We, with the help of member services, we went ahead and set up a workstation there. There were 2 computers in member services. We put together some questions, and as members walked in, we asked if they wanted to participate in this testing. And we were very fortunate that we did get a lot of response and people did take part in our testing. And after going through several members, we did this for a couple of weeks, we found that there wasn't any issues with the site architecture. And so we pretty much had the go-ahead or the green light to move forward with our design. And that's what we did. We moved into the next phases, which it was design. And then the bigger portion of this project is the content audit. As you well know, LACERA.com houses a lot of information. There are a lot of web pages with just a lot of content regarding retirement benefit information. And it was going to take some time to get through all of that. So that was going to be an ongoing review. At this point, I definitely want to take time to say thanks to all the team members, various subject matter experts, staff members, and also legal. This was definitely a collaborative effort, and I want to thank them all for their help because it's, again, we couldn't do it without everybody's input. So since that last meeting, moving forward, unfortunately, we had the COVID-19 pandemic, and that kind of pushed communications in a different direction. We had a lot of communication that we had to give to our members and also internally, but we also had our other annual projects, such as the annual report, the CAFR-PAFR, newsletters, and so forth, which took us away just a bit from focusing 100% on LACERA.com. But that's not to say that we didn't continue to move it forward. We were always working on the content audit portion of it, which I had mentioned is a big part of this project. And so where are we at now? Here with me is Erica Haru. She's out of communications as well. And she's a creative coordinator or a project manager or the project manager on LACERA.com. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Erica, and she's going to bring you up to speed as far as where we're at currently. Erica?
Great. Thank you, Cynthia, and hello, everyone. So yes, so the content audit, which Cynthia was introducing, was a large undertaking. As she mentioned, the site hasn't been audited within the past 20 years. We started the content audit September of 2019 and completed it September of 2020. So it took an entire year to complete, and we were dedicating a lot of our time, even in between projects and transitioning to working from home due to COVID, to this content audit. And that's just a reminder in regards to how long the site has not been touched in terms of being audited. So what consisted of the auditing process? It was taking hundreds of existing web pages on LACERA.com and delegating them to divisions relating to their area of expertise. Feedback was then received by these divisions and reviewed by myself and our senior writer, Sarah Scott, who then took the revised web content and rewrote, reformatted it to meet web standards and simplified the content to make it more member friendly. Once our senior writer created the new web copy to fit within the new site structure, these sections were then sent back to the divisions for another round of review and then to legal for final review. So it's safe to say the new web copy has definitely been thoroughly vetted to ensure accuracy. So once that year-long content audit ended, we transitioned to the content migration phase, and that's where we currently are in. This phase started the beginning of this year, so January of 2021, and we expect for it to continue to the beginning of June of 2021. The content management system that we're currently using, also called CMS, was chosen by the LACERA Systems Division. It's Drupal. Drupal will replace our current CMS Collage, which is a much more complicated and antiquated system. Actually, Collage was developed in the 90s, and since 2010, there's really been no customer support. So we've had our fair share of user issues and limitations with the software. So we're really excited to get our hands on Drupal. I actually should say our web support tech is actually working within Drupal as we speak. So he's excited to be using this new CMS while he's migrating the content. Drupal is a more efficient CMS on the front and back end. And so what I mean by that is that Drupal will allow for a more flexible design to the front of the site, allowing for us to use new features, layouts, images, and videos, which I'll walk you through some of those in a moment. And then on the back end, where coding and publishing of web pages takes place, Drupal's streamlined CMS eliminates the amount of steps it takes to customize, edit, create, and publish web pages than that of Collage. So this is great because it's going to minimize the time it will take our web support tech to post and publish new or revised content to the site. So once the new web copy and remaining design components have been migrated into Drupal, myself, our senior writer, and writer twos will proof each section, making sure there's no grammatical errors, misspellings, broken links, things of that nature. And before moving to the final review phase, we will conduct another focus group with our member-facing internal divisions to ensure accuracy and that the site is functioning as it should. And now I will walk you through a couple of pages that we're currently, that have currently been migrated that we're working on. And I might have to share my screen. So bear with me. Okay, so this is the home page of the redesigned site. As you see, it has a really streamlined navigation bar, different from what we currently have. So this is, as Cynthia was mentioning, it's going to help the members better navigate throughout the site. As you move down the site, you will see a carousel. So the great feature about our carousel, it will allow for us to choose really powerful images of LA County or powerful images of Southern California to personify LA County. And to the right of the carousel, there is I would like to. This is a really neat feature. It's a curated search function. So once the site is live and members start searching, the top search topics will be curated within the I would like to. And of course, if members want a more specific search, they can use the search function right up above, the search bar above. As you scroll down, we do have our tiles. This is a great opportunity for us to promote member-facing topics, wide-ranging member-facing topics that speak to a majority of our members. This area is modular in design. Right now, we have 2 rows of 3 tiles. On the About Us page, which I will be showing shortly after this, you'll see that we have 1 row of 3 tiles. So we can change based upon the need. For the home page, we do like the style of 2 rows of 3 tiles because it allows for us to use, it allows for us to display a good amount of content for our members. We can also, based upon the analytics, we can also replace the topics that you do see here. So for instance, public safety officer, healthcare tax benefit, that speaks more so to a smaller audience. And so this, before we do launch the site, we will replace this with our plan books, which speaks again to the majority, which is how we want to use this section of the site. If you scroll down, or as I scroll down, you will see the news and announcements section. This section is really exciting for us because it's a great opportunity, of course, to promote the news, the upcoming news within LACERA, but also Drupal has a feature on the back end that allows for our web support tech to auto-populate content. So the news and announcements section, the entire article actually lives on LACERA News. Right now, currently within Collage, there's 3 different pages that our news information exists on. Our web support tech is having to manually post and publish to these 3 different pages. Within Drupal, there's an auto-populate feature where you post on one particular page and then you can choose other pages to auto-populate to it. So that's a really exciting feature for us to use. And of course, board activities still maintains itself on the home page. And this is where the agendas and other supplemental documents will live. So that's the home page. And then the About Us page. Similar layout, of course, the color schematic remains the same to go over. So as we begin at the top, we still have our main nav bar, which will be consistent throughout the site. But as you scroll, or as I scroll down, you will see that the carousel is no longer there. We have replaced it just with the static image. We're still keeping with the Southern California imagery. The carousel will remain a focal point for the homepage, as well as I would like to. I would like to is more specific to the homepage. That's the homepage is where members will more than likely enter first, especially when we roll out the site. So I would like to make more sense on the homepage versus the other pages throughout the site. As you scroll down, you will see the tiles. We have 1 row of 3. Just another example of the flexibility within the content management software. And these, of course, speak to the About Us section. And then we do have a video container, which is a great media type to use to communicate to members. And then this space for rent will be used for real-time messaging. For instance, if there's a communication campaign that we'd like to roll out, this is an opportunity for us to promote that message. If there's information that we need to get in front of the member, this is another great place to do that. And then lastly, we do have a Google Maps, which of course is an easy way for members to find LACERA. So that concludes the part of the presentation. Cynthia will discuss next steps.
Thank you, Erica. I appreciate that. So this is just a little preview of the design. We will be coming back to you in June, and that's where we will be walking you through the whole site. You'll actually be able to see it in its entirety. So that'll be in June. And it's in June because our proposed launch date is in July of this year. So we're really excited about that. It is moving forward, and we're getting closer to launching our new website, which again, we're really excited about. And we couldn't have done without the collaborative effort of all the staff members involved throughout the organization. So again, thanks to all those people that were involved. And that concludes our presentation. Are there any questions?
Excellent. We will open it up to the committee and the board if there's any questions about the presentation.
Sean?
Yeah, Ron.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Cynthia, even I understood it, and I think I could go through it. So I think what you've done is you really hit the nail on the head and made it so users can go through that and answer their questions. I thought that was very, very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Oakham. We really did our due diligence, along John Gaffney and all the staff members. That site architecture was really important to vet and make sure that we were going to make it user-friendly for our members. So I appreciate that input. A big win for us was also the member testing. That really helped and gave us confidence that we were in the right direction. So again, thank you for that comment.
Thank you. And I agree. I think the site, it looks very clean and easy to follow. Very much matches what other government agencies use for their websites, as far as what they're there for, and clicking on quick links and stuff. So definitely like it. Like to see it coming together, and looking forward to the actual launch.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to items for staff review. I believe we have one for us, Terry. And if not, I can cover it. The direction to staff was to, Bonnie, I see on there. You want to cover it?
Yes, sure. So staff will bring an FYI report to the OOC, and Milliman will also report back to the Board of Retirement regarding specifics of the funding and population of the Superior Court's OPEB liability. This will be part of the experience study presentation in March.
Perfect, thank you.
Chair Kehoe?
Yes.
Since the item is going to be presented by Milliman and my staff at the Board of Retirement, is it necessary to come back to the OOC?
I was just suggesting a written information only to directly address Mr. Robbins' question, and then cover it in totality for the full board.
We will do that then.
Perfect, thank you. And then we'll move along to good of the order. Rather than calling on everybody, I'll just open it up. If anybody on the committee or board or staff have any comments for good of the order, please speak now. I see none, so let's go ahead and move to executive session. I know it's been a long meeting so far, so I'm going to give a 10-minute break before we start with executive session. So actually, let's do a 7 minutes. Let's start at 12:50 p.m. We'll resume in closed session.